Hello, this is Shirley's Biblical Kitchen, and I want to welcome you here today. We're going to be making a fall grain bowl. I like grain bowls any time of the year. They're especially popular in the summer and spring with a lot of people, but I love them in the fall. It's still 90 degrees here, so it's really kind of summer, I guess. But fall is supposed to be here, and I think it's going to be cooler next week. But grain bowls are so good. You can just make them so many ways. You know, the focus of our shows is to be cooking whole grains and foods and whole foods. These are whole foods. All of these are whole foods, so we'll talk about them. The foods that God put on the earth for us to eat. It's not so much of our food in the supermarket, it's sad to say, but it's just been ruined in many different ways. You read the labels and there's cheese spread, but it doesn't have any cheese in it. Or there's bioengineered this and everything's bioengineered, it seems. And food it's got so many fake ingredients. It's not real food. It's not whole food. It's not the food that God put on the earth. So on this show, we like to go back to our whole foods, our more nutritious foods, and our healthier foods. So these greens, and I do a lot of whole grain. I do baking, as you know. But these greens, this is einkorn, which is the oldest ancient grain, and one of the most nutritious, and one of the ones lower in the gluten structures when you make bread. And then I've got barley. And what I do when I have time at different times, I'll cook up a grain, and maybe I'll cook up a couple of cups. I'll let it cool, drain it into a strainer and let it cool. Then I'll put it on a cookie sheet with parchment paper. Then I cover that up with plastic wrap and freeze it. Then you can just dump it into your Ziploc bag and label it. And you can take out a variety. Like I took out some einkorn, I took out some barley. I have rye in the freezer. You can do kamut. There's all kinds of grains, and different grains, as we know, have a little different nutrition and different taste. So what I'm going to add to this one today, and you can make them, you can just make them so many ways. I've just got my 2 grains here. They're fully cooked, and when I cook them, I salt them, or I'll put sometimes Cajun seasoning if I want that spice, but for my grains I'm going to freeze, I generally just salt them. So they have a little bit of salt, but not too much. Then I've got some cut up cooked chicken here, and I'm going to add this. You can add as much as you like. You can add any kind of meat, whatever you want. Just cut it up in bite-sized pieces and put as much or as little as you want in that grain bowl. Grain bowls are just sort of, make them the way you like them. I've got a couple of bowls here. I'll put these in, and we'll just kind of stir that up. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put just a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Now, I'm not going to put much. I'm going to drizzle. Just a little drizzle in there. If I can get some to come out. That bottle is empty. I guess that would be enough. We'll make it work. I have more, but I don't want to go get it. If I want more later, I can add it. And what you'll do is you'll season this to taste. Now, what I have here, I made this up, I don't know, some time ago. It's pretty much fermented anything. But what I did is I put fresh tomatoes, I chopped them up, and I put fresh cucumbers that I chopped up, and fresh onions that I chopped up. Then I put in some apple cider vinegar and a little bit of stevia to sweeten it. Not too much. You put it as sweet as you want, but I don't want it real sweet. Just a tad bit. And of course you've got the juice from the tomatoes. You just let that marinate. That vinegar, it just will keep. I've had this for a while, and it'll keep for a long time. I'll eat it with a meal. It's also really good on grain bowls. So I'm going to put a few spoonfuls right in my grain bowl. And like I said, you could just chop up tomatoes and onions and cucumbers, but when they're pickled like this, they just have more flavor. And this has been setting for a while, so it's really built up some nice flavor. So we'll stir that in, again, as much as you like. You can always go back and taste and add. Now you can just stop right here. If you wanted to, that's a great grain bowl right there. I would taste it, see if it needs more salt or if it needs a little pepper or anything. Or if it's got enough of, I'm going to put another spoon in. I like quite a bit of the, sort of the pickled vegetables in there. It's just kind of my favorite. These are good with homemade sourdough crackers or homemade crackers of any kind. I've got more chopped onion, even though I have chopped onion in here. I like a little extra. These are just raw onions. And what's left of this, I'm just going to put in my bowl and let them pickle. They'll be fine. They'll pickle up in there. Yeah. And then I have here, I like these a lot. These are fermented pickles, and they're a little bit sweet, and they're already chopped up in little pieces. I love these. I put them on crackers and just eat them, but I love these things, so I'm going to put a few of those in there. And now I'm going to stir it up, and then I'll taste it, and I'll see if it's the way we want it. Let me talk a little bit about the grains, though, before I taste it. The barley and the einkorn, when they're whole, these have not been milled into flour. They're just whole grains. That is your healthiest grain. I mean, you mill it in the flour, you lose some just from milling it because you're breaking it up. But the whole grains is what a lot of people really recommend, a lot of the experts, because this gives you all the nutrients. There's about 40 different, or plus more maybe, different nutrients in einkorn, in whole grains, in whole wheat, in any whole grain, in any whole grain product. I'm going to taste this. I'm going to put a tiny bit of pinch of salt. And I think I'll add a little more balsamic vinegar after a while because it needs a little more. I'll have to get another bottle out. But again, put it to your taste. And these are, like I said, they're great with whole grain bread if you have some already made. Heat it up and eat it with it. So good. You can eat this as a side dish, even though I put meat in it. Sometimes I don't put meat in it if I just want to eat it as a side dish. And you can put different kinds of meat too, but just mix you up some grain bowls. This will be good tomorrow too. I won't throw any of it out. I'll eat it for lunch tomorrow. But your einkorns, your rye, your barley, they're all a little different nutrient. Like einkorn is really good for your eyes because of the lutein. It's good for lots of B vitamins, magnesium, all kinds of things. But your barley is good for your heart. Barley was used by the Romans and the ancient people. It was a very hardy grain that kept them healthy, and when they went into battle, the slaves that were in combat by the Romans, you know, they captured slaves and made them fight. Well, they would feed them barley to keep them strong. So barley's been around a long time. I don't think we eat enough barley. We've forgotten about some of these ancient grains and how good they are. And they're inexpensive. This is a real inexpensive meal. There's nothing hardly here. I've already made that out of the garden this summer. It's still good. The chicken was just left over, and like I said, a lot of times I don't even put meat in it. And then the grains, they don't cost, well, grains aren't cheap to buy, but once I buy them in bulk, but once you've got them, it amounts to, this wouldn't amount to hardly anything, you know, $1 or something maybe for the whole bowl. And you know, even making homemade bread is so nutritious and so good and just satisfying, I think. But you're adding so much nutrition to your diet in a very inexpensive way, because there's only takes about, maybe with your ancient grains they cost a little more, but it's still $2 or $2.50 a loaf. And if you buy a really good loaf of bread, I was looking at the one of the health food stores I was in today. I was just looking at some whole grain breads that were in the freezer. They were $7, $8 a loaf, $9 a loaf. I make mine just as nutritious, just as flavorful, probably tastes better for $2.50, maybe $3 a loaf. Depends on what all I'm putting in it, what kind of grain. So I know it doesn't cost a whole lot. So try some of this. I'm gonna put some of this in a little bowl for you. It's a very pretty dish, and said you can just keep this in your fridge and eat on it as you want to. But there you got it. If you want to put a few nuts on top, I'm going to sprinkle a few pecans on here actually when I eat it. That would be good. I love pecans too. I don't know about you, but I love pecans. You can put walnuts, you can put pine nuts. I like those too. Any kind of nut you wanted would be good on here. But try this and be creative with it. Do different kinds. You can make Greek salad grain bowls, and they have more like feta cheese and things like that in it. You can just make all kinds. I make one that uses quinoa. Quinoa makes a great grain bowl too. And I'll cook the quinoa. I'll cook it and keep it in the freezer too. But your quinoa, I add black beans, drained black beans, and some fresh corn. I like fresh corn. I buy a corn that's organic, and it comes actually freeze dried. but I'll use some of that in it sometimes. Or you could use fresh corn, fresh in the summer, right off the cob, would be great. And then I'll do like a vinaigrette dressing on it and some herbs. You can put herbs on here. Almost any kind of herb you like would be great on here. But that makes that einkorn, and you could use any kind of grain too, but the einkorn, the black beans with some corn and herbs and sort of a sweet vinaigrette. It's amazing. It's just an amazing, and that's a good side dish that you can have for more than one meal, because it's going to, once these marinate, they just taste better. Sometimes they're even better. They're soaked up and they taste a little better maybe the second day. But get creative with your grain bowls. They're inexpensive. I don't know, kids may not like them. They may, I don't know, it depends on your kids. But if you can get them to eat them, they'd be very healthy for them. You could do a fruit grain bowl with some different kinds of blackberries and cherries and kind of a sweeter version of a grain bowl, and still have your greens in there. A little bit of, I use like stevia or something, but you might just use a cane sugar or something. I like the unrefined sugars as much as I can, or even a suganut or an unrefined cane sugar, but whatever you're using, just move more and more and more, and gradually move your family to eating healthier things. It's little baby steps sometimes, but the more you keep encouraging them to eat some of these things, the better off all your family's going to be. You should have less health issues. People should feel better as you move towards getting more wholesome food in our bodies. We need wholesome food with all the nutrients in it, or as many as we can get in it. You know, things even organically grown nowadays, they're not as healthy as what you raise out in your garden sometimes, because the soil isn't been sustainably grown or sustainably built up. Some farmers do it right and some do it wrong, so you just have to find out where you're buying your food. But the more people build up the soil with natural substances, the healthier, more nutritious your food's going to be. The big commercial farms, they're going to have to take shortcuts, or they probably do take shortcuts. I get my ancient grains from ancientgrains.com, and they're growing it the right way. Let's put it that way. They do everything the right way, so it's a good source. But I hope you'll try this, and I hope you'll enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next show.